Let's go live.
All right, go ahead.
Well, welcome to our press call, and thank you for joining us. And I'd like to please note that this call is being recorded. I'm Robert Muse. I'm the co-founder and senior counsel of the American Freedom Law Center. And joining me today on this call are our two clients in this litigation, Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer, who are suing on their own behalf and on behalf of their organizations, the American Freedom Defense Initiative, or AFDI, and Jihad Watch. Ms. Geller is the president, and Mr. Spencer is the vice president of AFDI, and Mr. Spencer is the director of Jihad Watch. Originally, my colleague and fellow co-founder of AFLC, David Yershami, was going to be on this call, but he could not make it. Today, we filed a federal lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, located in our nation's capital. A copy of the complaint is available online at the web location where you found the information for this press call. And the website is AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org. Our agenda today is as follows. I'll provide a brief overview of the litigation and then turn it over to Ms. Geller, who will be followed by Mr. Spencer. Our lawsuit was filed today against the Attorney General of the United States, Loretta Lynch. It was filed against the Attorney General because this lawsuit challenges Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, a federal law that grants immunity to the social media giants Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, thereby allowing them to engage in censorship and discriminatory business practices that would otherwise violate anti-discrimination laws as we set forth in our lawsuit. All of these companies are based in California, and California has an anti-discrimination law that is broadly construed and, in fact, by its own terms, applies to all business establishments of every kind whatsoever. So, but for the immunity granted by the federal government, these companies could not engage in their discriminatory business practices. Consequently, Section 230 confers broad powers of censorship upon Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube officials who can then censor constitutionally protected speech and engage in discriminatory business practices with impunity by virtue of this power conferred by the federal government, and which we allege now violates the First Amendment. In fact, case law establishes that state action lies in the enactment of a statute like Section 230 that alters legal relations between persons regardless of whether the private acts are attributable to the state. Therefore, this lawsuit is brought, again, under the First Amendment. Once this immunity provision is struck down, then the immunity protection is removed, the door will be open for direct legal challenges against Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. At that time, their legal exposure will be huge. So we suspect that they will be forced to change their practices on their own. But if they don't, we will certainly go after them directly. So I'd like to conclude my opening remarks with this. Allowing social media giants, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, to engage in such blatant censorship and discrimination as we've set forth in this lawsuit, free from any liability, has severe and adverse consequences that go far beyond the harm caused to our clients. By selectively targeting certain groups and political and religious views for disfavored treatment, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are able to shape public policy and indeed unduly influence political elections to the detriment of our democratic form of government. At this time, I'll turn over the mic, as it were, to Ms. Geller for her comments.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, members of the press, for joining us. This is Pamela Geller, the president of the American Freedom Defense Initiative. This is not just our lawsuit. We are suing on behalf of all freedom-loving peoples. I receive every day emails from readers and members of my various Facebook groups asking for help because they've been blocked from posting a story, or they posted a story that was deemed critical of jihad terror and might offend Muslims, and so they're blocked. And with each block, the time gets longer. It goes from 3 days to a week to a month. This is America. This is not Saudi Arabia. And Facebook has enormous power, and they wield it like a club. For years, I've documented the outrageous bias of Facebook's speech policies. It's notoriously one-sided. It's against those who oppose jihad terror or support Israel and stand against the most brutal and extreme ideology on the face of the earth. We are systematically blocked and banned. And this is the last frontier for us. We don't have a platform in the mainstream media, and we are unable to engage in the public square. And Facebook is the public square. It is today's public square, and it's where we connect, and we have to fight for it. We should be able to communicate with our friends, our colleagues, and our supporters without worrying about Big Brother, because shouting into the wilderness is not freedom of speech. My Facebook page has over 350,000 followers. My group's another maybe 200, 500,000 people, and I'm constantly being shackled in what I can and cannot say. It has to stop. I mean, there was a time when the government would get involved in such things. I mean, they broke up AT&T. This is far bigger, far more influential, and far more powerful. And that's why we filed this lawsuit. It's enough.
Thank you, Ms. Geller. I'd like to turn the mic over this time to Mr. Spencer.
Thank you. This is part of a larger battle. It's part of an ongoing and concerted effort by leftist and Islamic groups that have grown increasingly authoritarian and inhospitable to open dissent. We have seen over the years a dramatic change in the public square, where there used to be an appreciation for open discussion and debate and an understanding that people of goodwill would differ on fundamental questions. Now the left in particular is embarked on a concerted effort to demonize its opposition and to marginalize it altogether and ultimately to criminalize dissent from its line. What Facebook and Twitter and the rest of them are doing and what we are challenging in this suit is an attempt to rule out all points of view that dissent from the line that they wish that all people would follow. This is extraordinarily insidious because the freedom of speech is the foundation of any free society. No society can be free if there is not open discussion. Any tyrant can work his will and have no opposition whatsoever if all the opponents are silenced. We see this advancing all the time. There's an increasingly popular slogan or epigram among the left. Hate speech is not free speech. Now, all of us here who are speaking today have been accused of hate speech. This is an entirely spurious term and an entirely spurious concept that is designed to demonize a certain segment of thought and to rule it out of the acceptable discourse. And the idea that there is a category of thought called hate, or category of speech, that is actually objectively recognizable as hate speech and that is not to be accorded First Amendment protection is entirely fictional and has been created in recent times in order to try to make an end run around the First Amendment and make it impossible for those who have been accused of hate speech to propagate their ideas. The problem is hate speech is a subjective judgment in the eye of the beholder or in the eye, actually, of the person who is empowered to make those judgments. And that person wields extraordinary power by declaring something hate speech if he can thereby render it illegal or unacceptable to be propagated. And that is what Facebook and Twitter are doing in the service of a frankly authoritarian and quite sinister agenda. So we are standing up to challenge that today.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. At this time, I'd like to open the call to questions from the press. So if you have a